Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of TECM 5191. This is going to be a lot of info, so buckle up. Hope you watch this carefully, listen to this carefully. I'm going to cover quite a bit, but let's get rolling. Okay, so first I wanted to show you this, and I'll actually post this. I'll make this available to y'all on the Canvas. But this is a Gantt chart, which is essentially just a project management tool to visualize different work across longitudinally across time. So basically what I've done here is I've put together this Gantt chart for the entire semester. And it gives you an idea of sort of the concurrent work you have to do. So visually, you can see we've got 3 major projects: our web portfolio project, our single source project, which is a team project, and our screencasting project. And we've got those 3 projects, and there's some overlap. So for example, you'll see in our web portfolio assignment, this is going to run throughout the whole semester pretty much, with the due date being the end of the semester. A single source project, on the other hand, starts in module 2 and ends in module 4. And then the screencasting project starts in module 5, ends in module 7. So this is a handy way to just kind of see what we need to do each week and then how they connect to each other over time. So what we'll look at here is module 2. This is helpful to just kind of show you what's due midweek and what's due end of week. So midweek, we've got our HTML tutorial and our CSS tutorial, and this is going to be obviously directly applicable to our web portfolio assignment. Interestingly enough, too, though, both the HTML and CSS tutorials will also be helpful in completing our single source project as well. So primarily it's related to our web portfolio assignment, but also tertiarily related to the single source project. You'll also notice midweek we've got a team charter and a team charter and a team formation activity. We'll talk about that here in a second. That's due midweek. So you've got 3 things due midweek. And then you've got a Madcap Flare tutorial, which is going to be the software you're going to use to complete the single source project. That is going to be the end of week, due at the end of week. Okay, so just kind of a snapshot of what needs to be turned in at the end of the week. Let's quickly talk about the tool tutorials. So first, we're going to focus on HTML and CSS, and you'll learn way more about this in the tutorials, but just as a quick, brief rundown, HTML is a markup language that allows us to basically structure content, and CSS is a way to actually change the format and design and output of the actual HTML. So HTML is structure of content, CSS is visual design. You'll be introduced to both of those things this week. And then at the end of the week is a Madcap Flare tutorial, and I'll show you that here in a second. So with the HTML and CSS tutorials, I've estimated about 2.5 hours. And I'm asking you to complete the first 5 lessons, and you'll see the link in the assignment description. So the first 5 lessons: introduction, editors, basic, elements, and attributes for HTML. And then for CSS, you'll be asked to complete the first 3 sections along with a few exercises. So make sure you're reading the assignment description carefully. But introduction, syntax, and selectors. So this is just sort of a follow-along tutorial on the W3 Schools website. It's free and fairly easy to follow along. I want to also point out that I've included supplementary video tutorials. You do not have to complete those, but for those of you that are interested in learning more about HTML and CSS, I've posted an entire series of video tutorials that I have created as well. Again, those are not required, but will provide you with more context and information if you're interested in that. The Madcap Flare tutorial, and again, Madcap Flare is going to be an authoring program. It's a piece of software that helps technical writers author content. So you can think of it as like an alternative to Google Docs or an alternative to Microsoft Word. But in fact, it's way more powerful than either of those 2 things because it helps technical writers actually create single sources of content. We talked about this briefly last week, but essentially single sources of content are the same content in one place used in multiple outputs. For example, let's say you have an FAQ section you've created. You might want to put that on your website. You might want to also provide that as a short one-page quick start guide. You may be able to reuse that content. You're not reinventing the wheel. So that's what Flare allows us to do. And this tutorial is going to give you way more context. That's going to take about, I've estimated, 3.5 hours. And this is going to be through LinkedIn Learning. So you'll see the link to that also in the assignment description for the week. The other thing you'll do this week in terms of instructional materials, I won't actually provide a lecture this week, but there is a almost hour-long video walkthrough of Madcap Flare, and that is actually produced and put out by the folks at Madcap Flare. And so I know that it's long. I know that it's almost an hour. You can play it on 1.5x and kind of shorten it. But it's going to be super helpful to give you context about what is Madcap Flare, how does this work, how do all the moving parts work. Extremely important primer to Madcap Flare. So be sure to watch that before completing this tutorial.
Okay, so I want to take quite a bit of time in this video to simply describe the Team Single Source project. This is going to be due at the end of week 4, just for context. And I wanted to give you as much context as I possibly can. Now, right off the top, it's very important that you read through the Single Source project assignment description as carefully as humanly possible. It's this project emulates a real world project, but the problem is in real world projects there's a lot of moving parts. It's a little bit complex, and so it's going to be challenging. But I'm going to make it as clear as possible in this description. So what we see here is just contextual information about the project. So this is a hypothetical situation that we've created where there's a company called The Tech Company, and they create a product called a Zen 4 server. So Zen 4 servers are pieces of hardware that get installed, enterprise-level servers, and they are manufacturers of that server. The Zen 4 server. Their existing content, their existing technical documentation for the Zen 4 server is just 2 PDF files. One PDF file that is focused on software and one PDF file that is focused on hardware. There's limitations with that, right? So when they sell these hundreds of thousands of dollar servers to their customers, all they're providing is 2 PDFs, and customers are not getting enough support from the tech company. So the tech company has basically put out a call for proposals, and they would like help with their existing content. Again, those 2 PDFs. They want to make the content much more flexible by being able to update the content once and being outputted to multiple things, so PDF and web. They want to make online content searchable. So right now they only have PDFs. They don't have anything online. They want to produce also, again, print PDFs of individual chapters. They also want to create consistency for translation purposes. And then they want to also be able to personalize print PDFs for different customer bases. Okay, so those are their 5 overarching goals. You'll notice here in the middle, there's a consulting company called Content Rules, and they want to win this contract. So tech company has these huge servers that they sell, expensive servers. All they've got right now to send to customers are PDFs. They want to do better. And so they're looking for a company to help them do that. Content Rules is sort of that company. They want to win this bid to convert all of the Zen 4 content to meet these criteria. Your job, so let's finally get to your team. So your team in TECM 5191 is that you're going to be subcontracted by Content Rules to create what's called a proof of concept. So essentially, you're creating a proof of concept to try to win all of the business from the tech company. Okay? And so what we want to do is we want a proof of concept that illustrates or demonstrates these 5 criteria. Okay? And so The way we're going to do that is we're going to take the existing PDFs, the two PDFs that I mentioned earlier, and we're going to convert that content using Madcap Flare into modular content. Okay, we're going to convert that content into small chunks, small topics, and we're going to use those small chunks and small topics to create, again, print PDFs and an online searchable database. Okay, we're going to do all of that in Madcap Flare. And so that is sort of the overarching, what is it that we have to do? That's sort of the overarching description of what we're trying to do. Okay, so now let's look at some of the details. So the Zen 4 server content you can find, and I would obviously it's hundreds of pages long, so don't read it all, but I would at the very least skim through all of the Zen 4 content that's available. So there's a PDF for a system hardware installation guide and a PDF for a system software configuration guide. Okay. So both of those are provided in the assignment description. They're also provided in any tutorials that require you to use any Zen 4 content. Okay. That's an important thing to understand is their existing documentation we already have, you have access to as PDFs. These will be imported into Flare for you. So we're sort of skipping a step and we kind of did that for you. So as PDFs, I believe they were created in FrameMaker. I don't believe they were created in FrameMaker, and we imported those as chapters into Madcap Flare. Back to this really quickly before we move on. So, like I said, you need to create a single source proof of concept that demonstrates these criteria. The way we're going to create a proof of concept is we're going to focus only on a subset of content of the Zen 4 content. Okay, so this is very important. We're only going to be working on chapter 1 of the hardware installation guide and chapter 1 of the software configuration guide. Okay, so when we're asked to create print PDFs and an online searchable database, we're only going to do print PDFs for the first chapter of each PDF of each existing PDF, and I'm also going to ask you to work on some of the content in the appendices. So you'll see specifically which parts of the appendices you'll need to use, but it'll be Appendix A of the software configuration guide and Appendix B of the system hardware installation guide. Okay, so again, just chapter 1 of each, and Appendix A of the software and Appendix B of the hardware. That is going to be the content that we're going to be working with in your proof of concept. So how is this broken down? So I've tried to break this down into multiple assignments. So all of these here up until part 5 are all going to be turned in prior to the actual final deliverable, the final proof of concept in Flare. All of these are going to they're going to help you build your knowledge base and help you actually complete this 5th phase, the proof of concept. Okay. So let me explain some of these. So this week in particular, week 2, you'll complete a CSS tutorial and a Flare tutorial. You'll also form a team and complete the team charter, but let's focus specifically on the technical details here. So in phase 1 and 2, the CSS tutorial and the Flare tutorial, you're just working through the tutorials. You're not working on Zen 4 content. You're not worried about Zen 4. You're not worried about servers. You're not worried about any of that. You're just introducing yourself to CSS, which helps you learn how to visually alter parts of the content. And then you're working on Madcap Flare. That's going to be the single source for authoring tool that you'll use for this project. Okay, so again, just phases 1 and 2, no Zen 4 content. Okay. Phases 3 and 4, which are going to be completed in week 3, so in next week, in next week's module. These are going to be focused specifically on Zen 4 content, meaning whatever you do in this topic-based and structured authoring tutorial, you'll be able to use for your proof of concept. Similarly, as a team project, or I'm sorry, a team assignment, you'll complete a content model assignment, and that too will be directly related and can be directly used in your proof of concept as well. So these are not, in phases 3 or 4, these are not independent, just busy work. These are actual assignments that you'll use specifically for phase 5. I'm going to explain the topic-based and structured authoring tutorial and the content model in detail next week, because those will be due next week. But let me briefly talk about each of those. So as an individual deliverable, you'll actually start using, again, Zen 4 content here in phase 3. So you'll complete a topic-based and structured authoring tutorial. It'll be kind of a walkthrough, and I'll encourage you to read through that very carefully. But you'll also need to access actual Zen 4 content. All of the instructions to access the content, including licenses and ways to access the content via Central, Madcap Central, which is basically a cloud-based repository, will be included in this assignment description, okay? But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at some of the files that are already loaded into Madcap Flare from the Zen 4 content. And you're basically going to create templates for different types of topics, right? So topics that are teaching someone how to do a task, you're going to create a template for. Topics that are just reference topics, right? So maybe a list of specifications. You're going to create a template for that. And so on and so forth. We'll talk way more about that next week. So if you're a little bit confused, don't fret. It'll become clearer as we learn more about topic-based authoring and structured authoring. Phase 4 is a team-based assignment, and it's creating a content model. And basically, a content model is basically a way of organizing content at 2 levels, right? So one at a micro level. So within each individual topic, what kind of content's allowed, right? So, for example, a task-based topic, like how to install the software, for example, you're going to have a content model that defines what kinds of content goes in that kind of article. That also kind of builds on this assignment in phase 3 as well. You'll also work on what's called a macro level content model, meaning all of the content that we're putting together. What are some ways that we're going to organize all of the content we're going to put together? And so that's sort of a high level overview of what the content modeling assignment is as well. But just to get to the nitty gritty, essentially what you'll be given a spreadsheet with literally every piece of content that exists for the Zen 4 server. And you'll basically walk through the process of doing an information architecture on all of that content. Okay. So that would include, collecting all the content, which we did for you, and then auditing the content, categorizing it, creating taxonomies for the content and the ways that the content relates with each other, and then ultimately actually creating keywords and metadata for each piece of content so that users can easily find that content. Okay, so all of these things, again, are going to be related to these 5 criteria that we're trying to do, the tech company's trying to do with their content. They're just broken up into multiple assignments, okay? And so I get that there's a lot of moving parts. I just wanted to be extra comprehensive at this stage so you've got an idea of all of the things that are coming up. And then ultimately, especially, again, in phase 3 and 4, we're going to use the stuff we actually completed in phase 3 and 4, and we're going to finally create the proof of concept in Flare. Again, read the single source project assignment description carefully. That will give you lots of context and information. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create basically what are called 3 targets in Madcap Flare. One target is going to be chapter 1 of the hardware. Another target is going to be chapter 1 of the software. And then a third target is going to be all of that content included in a web-based version. So 3 different targets, 2 PDFs and 1 web-based version. And all of those, the cool thing is that all 3 of those targets, the 2 PDFs and the web-based form, are all coming from a single source, right? So they're all coming from the repository in Madcap Flare that has the content, okay? So that's really cool. So let's say you've needed to update, let's say you needed to update the some specification for a piece of hardware. There's a typo or they've upgraded it, or you just had to make some change. You can make that change in your topic in Madcap Flare one time, and then it gets outputted into 3 different targets, and you're not having to make that change 3 times. Okay, so just as an example of what the advantage of single sourcing might be. So that's a really high level overview of the Team Single Source project. I hope that's helpful. If you've still got questions, do not hesitate to ask. Thanks.
One of the things you'll also be asked to do is to form a team. I've estimated this to take about 2 hours, so I want you to read the assignment description carefully. And to form a team, you'll go into the People menu of Canvas, and you'll see that you can just sign up for a team. I'm going to allow you to sign up for whatever team you want to sign up for. Teams are capped at 4 people, but you'll just need to sign up for a team. And then you'll download and review a team charter template. If you've ever taken a class in TECM, you'll be familiar with this. But the team charter is just an empirically proven way to sort of begin and kick off a project and set expectations. So take a look at that template. It should be pretty self-explanatory. And then when you complete the charter, you'll complete together as a team, but for this assignment, you'll submit it individually. So make sure that every member submits a copy of the team charter, even if it's identical to other members. And then finally, we've got the discussion post. I've allocated about an hour for this. So you're going to watch the source material. Again, it's going to be an almost hour-long Madcap Flare introduction. You're going to respond to a classmate. You're going to share your reactions. And then there's also related to self-regulated learning that we talked about last week. I'm asking you to identify and commit to improving one self-regulated learning focus area. Please refer to last week's video lecture for more information on self-regulated learning, or readings from last week on more information about self-regulated learning. I know that was a lot. It was a lot. I'm glad you followed along and you made it to the end. If you've got questions, do not hesitate to email me. We all should have Zoom meetings set up soon, and so I look forward to meeting you in person if I haven't, or at least, I look forward to meeting you online if I haven't. And of course, if you're on campus, please feel free to stop by Auditorium 316 and just pop in and say hi. But happy week 2. Please email with any questions.